idea for all this really came from a dream?
Yes, it did.
Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is Tim Swartz. Tim is an Indiana native and an Emmy-Award winning television producer, videographer, and is the author of a number of popular books, including The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, America's Strange and Supernatural History, Time Travel, Fact, Not Fiction, and Admiral Byrd's Secret Journey Beyond the Poles. As a photojournalist, Tim has traveled extensively and investigated paranormal phenomena and other unusual mysteries from such diverse locations as the Great Pyramid of Egypt to the Great Wall of China. He has worked with major television networks both in the US and internationally. He has also appeared on the History Channel's programs Ancient Aliens, Evidence, Ancient Aliens Declassified, and the History Channel Latin America series Contacto Extraterrestre. Tim is also the writer and editor of the free weekly online newsletter and email newsletter, Conspiracy Journal, considered essential reading by paranormal researchers worldwide. In his spare time, he's also the host of the webcast Exploring the Bizarre with Timothy Green Beckley on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Tim, welcome to Nox Mente.
Why, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure being with you tonight.
We've been looking forward to this.
Absolutely.
I got you in my chair, Tim.
Then in that case, I'm sorry.
It's crazy when people want to talk to you, right? I get it.
I don't understand.
I don't either, but yeah.
You better have answers, young man.
Well, that's I don't know if I can provide any answers. I mean, I can talk to you, get tired, and then go on to the next question. But as for answers, I don't know if any of us really has any answers.
I totally agree with you there. I think, and it does seem for those of us, you do this, the more we dig, the more we talk to people, it seems like the more questions, the field just gets bigger.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That's the mystery of it all and the beauty.
But it gets us out of the echo chamber, too.
Yeah. Well, it's like those, like Russian nesting dolls.
Yes.
I mean, you pull one off, and there's another, and another, and another, and it just keeps going down into the abyss.
And what a fun ride it generally is.
Oh, I enjoy it. I wouldn't be here talking with you tonight if I didn't.
Yeah, well, I love your body of work, and of course, we love the weird here, and I think you're kind of one of I consider you one of the masters of the weird.
Okay.
Oh wait, can I say that word these days? Is saying the word master of weird?
Master weirding?
Yeah. Am I gonna get in trouble?
You can say whatever the fuck you want, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Tim, let's get started with some of the early stuff, taking it way back to the OG, back to the dusty memories. What is the world that you recall deep in the recesses of your mind as a young person, as far back as you can go? What things stand out for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, now I know that when you ask that question, you're supposed to say, well, I was floating in the clouds, saw my mom and dad, told the angels that those are the people that I wanted to be with, and unfortunately, mine would be just a little bit more mundane. And I think that one of my earliest memories actually, I remember being in my I don't know what you would call it. It wasn't a crib. It was more, like a night bed that had, like crib-like bars on it, to prevent a toddler from falling out at night. But I remember one night being asleep, and our cat jumping into the bed. This is like in the middle of the night. He jumped into the bed. And I don't know if he had gotten accidentally shut up in my bedroom, but he was at the foot of my bed meowing. And I can still, he was a black cat, and I remember that so distinctly. And then I don't know if this was part of that same evening or just a continuation of events that involved the cat. I remember cat being in my room, and I had like a teddy that had like fluffy stomach, like belt lock collar, and I was like pulling little wads of hair off of it and dropping it over the side of the bars of my crib for the cat to play with, and just being just so amused by it. But I couldn't have been too old though. I mean, probably no. I couldn't have been more than 3, probably less than that, because I was put into regular bed fairly early on. So I may have been 2 years old, something like that. And I have an even earlier memory. I mean, it's really vague. Where I remember being held in the arms of I think it was my mother, and we were standing outside of I think it was a church, standing in a line, and I could remember that it was kind of like a cold gray day, and I was fascinated by the clouds going by above, and and that may have been. I mean, I may have been no more than just year old plus because I was the way I remember it. And I think that's probably as far back it'll it'll
Do you
memory.
have on that on that specific memory? Do you is there a mood attached to it?
Not really. It's more this recollection of watching the cloud go by uh, of, and that's something that has stuck with me for some reason for all of these years. I mean, I'll still at times I often have the chance to play outside of my and I think it's because of that earliest memory, just being fascinated with the way that they were moving up. I know that the first time that I had ever seen the clouds before, or at least uh, noticed them. But that and playing with my cat are probably early.
Those are great memories. I really I like the cloud one. And see, there you were. You let us in with before you were in the womb, and there was still this kind of cloud imagery. We've already got a theme going. Nothing gets by me.
That's right. That's right.
But the tearing the teddy bears stuff off, I love it. I love these early memories from people, and the crib is certainly young. Definitely, it's like 2 or younger even.
Mm.
So
Yeah, well, and like I said before, I mean, it was supposed to be getting out, but that never stopped. Yeah, pretty quickly crawl over the bars and get out.
escape artist.
Yeah, well,
I
much
had
to my parents' chagrin, right?
I messed with my mother. I didn't know I was doing this. I had one of those playpens, and I guess the one of the panels on the bottom, there was it must have slat was out or something. So if I rolled, I would get out. And she couldn't figure out how I was getting out. It was like magic because I was too young. I was crawling and stuff. So there was no way I was jumping out. And so she finally had to spy on me to see, but I had figured it out and I consistently did it.
Uh, it's amazing how kids can figure stuff like that out to the point that it does it mystifies your parents and how you're able to do
Right. Yeah, especially if they just want you to, like toe the line for whatever reason. I think she was like ironing clothing or something. It was one of those take your mom to the edge moments that were very rare in my life that I learned very early on. Probably that was probably one of the occasions.
Oh,
I probably got my little booty spanked.
well, kids are really good at figuring out very quickly what buttons to push
Yes.
to get their parents as outraged as possible.
Yes. Well, that's the thing is I have no memory of ever having a spanking from my mama. None. I just know the tone of her voice when it would drop and a vein in her forehead. And that was it. That's all I needed, those 2 cues, and so it's something, she made that apparent very early, and it stuck with me. It's like, "All right, this I'm conditioned. I don't want this woman's wrath." Uh, so back there, Tim, what about stuff so a little older now, obviously, but stuff that you enjoyed, stuff that stuck out, cartoons, films, games you played, stuff like that, that was kind of like childhood stuff that seems fun and sticks out still, that's early.
Oh well, I was always a fan of cartoons. Now, you have to realize that I was a kid in the early '60s, so you had uh, really this blossoming television through the '50s was in its growing pain. So to speak. They were trying to figure themselves out. So by the time the early '60s came about, boy, I mean, you had great, especially kiddie types of programs, and of course, now where I live, I grew up in a town called Elwood in central Indiana, and the we were about 50 miles north of the capital of Indiana, Indianapolis, but we could only pick up maybe about 3 televisions. Sometimes 4 if the wind was blowing the right direction. You pick up channel 4, which they had the studios in Bloomington, but they had a transmitter app, and it was channel 4 that had all the kiddie cartoons, the kid-based shows that would air in the morning, at noon, and then in the afternoon when the older kids were coming home from school. You know,
Banana
kids
splits.
not. Well, oh my gosh, this was way earlier
Oh,
than
okay,
that.
okay.
I mean, you had um, uh, like Popeye cartoons and repeats of Looney Tunes.
Ah, yeah. Woody
Yeah,
Woodpecker, the lame cartoons too.
right. Oh yeah. Well, Woody, all the MGM cartoons,
Yeah,
like the lame ones. You're right. That's right. But and also, I mean, you had Hanna Barbera right around that time. They had
all right.
started releasing a bunch of made strictly for television cartoons, and I mean, they were terrible, of course, but you'd watch them anyway because you didn't have anything else. So I
But the
mean,
Flintstones was first prime
Flintstone,
time
right?
animation from them, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I mean, I was very into that kind of pop culture, comic book. And I mean, here I am, I'm 61 years old, and I still love cartoons. Of course, I'm uh, choosy now, but I mean, I'll still watch. But I also like some newer types of animation, say like Adventure Brothers.
How about Rick and
Rick and
Morty?
I was just getting ready to say
Mm.
Rick and Morty, but I'm not. I'm I, I'm not going to go and put myself in the fanboy category that a lot of these people are because they just get really
Oh yeah,
extreme,
it's a good show. It's a good show.
yeah,
It's worth
uh,
watching. That's all.
uh, and The Simpsons, of course,
Hmm.
things like that. But comic books were especially um, favored by me, especially the DC comics. And really, it was kind of partially. I mean, there was other things going on, but some of these comic books actually helped lead me into my interest in the world of weird and paranormal. Um, One reason is that some of these comic books actually had uh, uh, paranormal plot lines to them. DC had a lot of tales on that, kind of like a cleaned up version of the old EC comics, it, minus the decapitated head, you know, flying out eyeballs, things like that. Um, so that kind of helped develop my interest towards the paranormal to a certain extent. Now, what I early on, like my first parts of elementary school, I really wasn't interested in that kind of stuff. I was interested in science. I liked the idea of space travel. I was really fascinated because, of course, at that time we had the whole beginning of the American space project, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo. I followed that kind of stuff, knowing at that time that by the time I was this age, I mean, we would have tourist visits to the moon and things like that, or
Flying cars.
flying cars and rocket packs.
Hmm.
They promised us rocket packs.
They
Where are
did.
rocket packs? Yeah.
I saw that movie.
Uh, so I mean, that is the kind of stuff that I was interested in as a kid, but really not so much when it came to like say UFOs or true stories of paranormal. Uh, that actually came about after I was given an assignment third grade, uh, based on used to get a little paper every week called oh the weekly news. It was from Scholastic Book. I don't know if you remember Scholastic Books, but the Scholastic Book Company had like a newspaper for kids that sent out. And there was like an aggregate of the nation's headlines. And, our teacher would pick an article for somebody, and then they would have to write a report and then give it as a presentation in class. One time, I got a story about UFOs, and I had no idea what UFOs were. Really could have cared less. So, I did my piece, and I was pegged by the class from that. I was the flying saucer. I was the guy who believed in little green men and Martians, UFOs, and all that. I could have cared less. Oh no, kids they always try to find something on you, and so I was the flying saucer. And that continued on through high school, believe it or not. I mean, this was like third grade, around 1968 or so. And but the thing that got me interested, that people would make fun of when there were other people around, but then later they'd come back and they'd say, I don't believe in that kind of stuff, but and then they'd proceed to tell me a story about how, say, their house was haunted, or they saw the UFO while they were on vacation. One night they woke up, there was great Aunt Irma standing in bed. Great Aunt Irma had died 2 weeks previously, and that's what really got me fascinated by all this stuff, was the fact that people were having these experiences, um, maybe with no previous knowledge that this kind of stuff even existed, and because of that, they had no way to categorize these experiences in their head. I mean, we all have this kind of like this categorization system in our head on how daily events are stashed away in our brains. Light turns red when you're driving, you stop the car. The cat's meowing, you feed it. If you see a disc-like object fly down from the sky and land in front of you, and gray guys come out and collect some rocks and fly away, Where are you going to put that in that categorization in your head? For most people, you know, they have no idea. This is something that's completely new. And the first thought that comes to people's mind, well, I'm crazy. And if they tell anybody, they'll think I'm crazy. So the fact that people would come to me and tell me these experiences, not with any kind of expectations of, say, trying to become famous or to make a quick buck or something like that. They just want somebody to listen to their experience and reassure them that they're not crazy or laugh at them. And I'm sure from other people that it can be extremely difficult and frustrating to try to tell others about an unusual experience. Because most of the time you'll get laughed at. Your coworkers, your family, they're the worst. They're the ones that will tease you the worst. So
And those
most of
kind of
the
things linger heavy on people. They really need to tell. Even
yes.
they couldn't even tell their best friend at the time, like in the '60s.
Yeah, I mean, really up until really recent times. Now, with the advent of like these reality shows, Ghost Hunters, and,
Yeah,
UFOs tonight, that sort of thing, people have a little bit more awareness that these kind of things actually exist. But I mean, really, up until just a few years ago, the majority of the population, unless they were already interested in this kind of stuff, had no idea. I mean, they may have had like seen something fake on television, but they would have no idea the complexity and
right,
really how often these kind of things
right.
happen. And these people would come to me, and I mean, the stories are disturbingly the same. Disturbingly, fascinatingly the same. That's the thing. I mean, I can always tell somebody who's trying just to spit a yarn to me because it can be just really too outrageous. Though I've heard some really absolutely incredible stories come to me from people that I know that they're telling the truth.
Space pancakes.
It's space pancakes. That's a good one.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
buckwheat and flour.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And a little salt.
so yeah, I mean, it was these people who were coming to tell me these stories, not expecting anything other than just friendly shoulder to lay their head upon and to reassure them that yes, other people have had these kinds of experiences. No, you're not crazy, and no, I'm not going to laugh at you. And then I mean, you can just see the weight come off these people's shoulders, and then they'll walk away. They may never ever tell anybody else again. It didn't matter. They found somebody that wouldn't laugh at him, listen to them, and say, "Yeah, I mean, you probably did have a real experience, and that shit happens."
It makes me so at this I'm curious, what is your like the big 3 in your astrological profile? Sun, moon, and rising, if you know?
Oh, well, let's see.
He's a Cancer.
I'm a Cancer. I was born June 23rd, 1958, but I don't have no idea what my other.
I'll run it while you talk.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it'd be we'll at least find out the moon for sure. That that's interesting because that's really the direction your life went with people with you talking to people on this level and people feeling free and candid with you in these ways.
Yeah, it's well, and um, a lot a lot of time, naturally people, know that I'm interested in stuff that come to me. But then again, I've had just complete strangers actually. I mean, they won't just come right up to me and start telling me weird stories, but just after, talking to them a little bit, pretty soon, these kind of oddball stories will come out. And it's almost like I have aura that will act are looking for some kind of reassurance from their unusual experience. Of course, you know, nowadays it's a little bit more difficult because and I don't want to make it sound egotistic, but I'm a little bit more, widely known, know what I'm
Yes.
interested in,
Yeah.
and that. But I mean, I have had, just recently, I was on vacation overseas, and I had several people uh, proceed to tell me about unusual, mostly ghostly type experiences that they had just out of the blue. And this always fascinates my wife, who um, really doesn't have a lot of interest in this kind of stuff. She's
Hmm.
kind of agnostic. She's told me that um, she's almost she's afraid to believe in this kind of stuff because she's afraid that'll attract it to her. But then again, she's afraid not to believe in it because she's afraid it'll make the phenomenon mad at her.
And
And
yet
and
she's
both are
married to you.
And
and
she's married to the, that's right, that's right.
and both positions are in some way true, which is
Yes,
the
Yes.
funnier
they
part.
are. But the funniest part is that she's married to Tim.
I know,
But
but
I mean,
I'm sorry. I was going to say her indecision is keeping it all at bay.
yeah, yeah. Well, exactly. And I mean, she's always the one though, and bless her heart, because it helps me a lot. But she's always the one that will always have a mundane explanation for something usual, no matter if the mundane explanation requires a lot more twisting and turning around to make it happen, rather than just straight out. Well, yeah, that was. I mean, I'm not the type that would just automatically go towards the, that was the ghost, what happened. And I always tell people I don't believe anything, because if you start believing in something, then that is going um, to warp the way that you investigate and research this type of phenomenon. That when you start to believe in say, like, oh, okay, so the commonly held belief is that ghosts are spirits of have passed on. But there could be an almost infinite number of explanations for this kind of, as far as interdimensional visitors, or whatever, ultra terrestrials, as Tim Beckley like put them. And so I kind of leave any preconceived notions out of the picture, just so it doesn't automatically carry me into any kind of predisposition, for an explanation. It's like UFO. Now, it always kind of irritates when I'm reading a book about UFOs. The author starts referring to them as spacecraft. And
Yes, thank you.
yeah,
That's a problem I have with what's going on in the media right now. Is
right,
they're
right,
conflating the two.
right. And it's just like, no, you have no proof one way or the other what they are. Sure, they could be spacecraft. You know? They could be time machines. They could be, I said before, interdimensional travelers. I mean, there's all kinds of different things. So, as soon as you start to believe in one aspect of a phenomena, if some new evidence presents itself, you could find yourself, subconsciously not accepting that, because you have already, formed a belief system that may not be correct.
There's a lot of that going on in social media today.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean that phenomena is across the board with so many aspects uh of information these days. It's kind of overwhelming, really. But we see how neurologically that all works, which is fascinating at this point, I think. I'm wondering, getting back, just finishing up that early stuff. What about, did you have fears? Under the bed, the closet, dark woods.
Oh sure. What kid does?
Well, there've been many that haven't, that we've talked with.
Hmm. If that was actually the case, then more power to them because you know, being a kid was hard. I mean, everybody talks about, oh, when I was a kid, it was just, I had no worries or fears, and just, skip along down the road,
Not in my paradigm.
blue skies, and yeah, it's just like no, that wasn't the case. Sure, I mean, there was, I have, just tons of great times, and but I was afraid of the dark. I don't know why. Um, it's not like I had any real knowledge about some of these things that later on I've learned about the ghost coming out of the closet, monster bed, but I didn't like the dark. Now I liked playing outside in the dark, but I didn't like say like a dark room. Uh, Outside if it was nighttime, in the summer. That was great. I love that. I could play I could play outside all night, not worry about a thing. But I didn't like a dark room. I I would have bad dreams uh,
Yeah.
about things in the dark. You know,
Do you recall any of those dreams or images left from them?
the one that and it's amazing because this one is always I had a series of dreams throughout my childhood, some kind of small uh, like hairy humanoid type creature that always pestered my pestered me. It would claw me apart, rip my stomach out, and
Oh,
just
wow.
yeah, just really horrid types of like
And that was reoccurring?
yes, yes. I remember there's several that still stand out in my memory where I remember um, going down a dark hallway in the house. We had like a small ranch style house, just a regular hallway. I was going down the hallway uh, to my bedroom at the end of the hallway, and all of a sudden my bedroom door came open, and this thing came out that looked. I mean, it was cloaked, like almost like it had like a blanket draped over it, and it was holding it, um, had it holding the blanket at its neck to give it a cowl-like appearance. And it was small. It was smaller than me. Yeah. And then suddenly, after it came out into the hallway, it threw this cloak off, and whatever this creature was, then act. But then the dream shifted where I was having more of like it was almost like that the tunnel of light type effect you had near death experience. And I was on my side, like on the floor, and it's funny because rather than experiencing this firsthand, it's like I was watching this happen, like I was third party observer, and I was rolling on the floor to get away from this thing, and it was chasing me. But at this point, rather than being bipedal, it was like running on uh, uh, all four paws, legs, and screaming some like horrible noise and tearing its teeth and chasing. But that dream, I don't remember catching somebody up. But that that thing, the little hairy animal creature, I can't remember what I the little hairy something or another. That thing bedeviled a lot.
How long would you say that went on?
Hmm. It's it's really hard to say. Probably through most of my young childhood. I would say probably by the time, you know, 8 or 9, it had pretty much that. But up to that point, I had that thing uh, bother quite often.
And that's very interesting. I have a lot. It brings up a lot of stuff for me, but I could get into that later. Did you like horror films early on, or early sci-fi stuff, like say the Star Trek stuff?
Oh sure, oh yes. I mean, I was probably like a lot of people you talk to. I very enjoyed the horror film. What I what I was allowed to see. Let me put it that way. Though I did get to see early on, gosh, how 10 or so, our local movie theater one time had like a double feature with one Hammer film, like the,
Oh, I love Hammer
yeah,
films.
well, it was The Evil of Frankenstein,
Oh, yes.
and oh, the Gorgon, the woman who got the snakes in her hair.
Yes,
Was
Medusa.
Medusa, yeah. And the funny thing about and I loved both. Even though for some reason the Evil of Frankenstein is not considered one of the best, and- but that one I absolutely loved. The funny thing is, and it just goes to show you how your memory works, and because of this experience, I always take this into consideration when I'm talking to people about their experiences, especially experiences that happened quite a number of years in their past. But I distinctly remember when this actress would become Medusa,
Mm,
her the snakes in her hair. I remember all of them, like, writhing on top of her head, and each one of them individually, was like,
yes.
snapping towards the
Yes.
camera, and I was just like, it was just, it was a wonderful thing to see when I was a kid. Okay, now flash forward a few years ago when I actually found this film again on streaming video and saw it, and the snakes were obviously like paper mache.
Yeah, yeah.
There was absolutely no life to them at all. It looked like that possibly that they were on strings with some kind of, like some kind of mechanical thing that was just making them individually, their heads bob up and down.
Yeah.
And that was it. But I could still see it in my mind's eye. That memory of those snakes, every one of them were alive, and their eyes were flashing, and the fork tongues were coming out. So, um, uh, reality in your memory, it's an amazing thing, and I can see why a lot of skeptics, when it comes to a lot of these unknown experiences, tend to be, skeptical,
Yes. Yeah.
because your memory is malleable. It changes. Now, I do have some other, like memories of childhood events that were very clear to me, and then later got confirmation there. I mean, nothing, nothing extraordinary, but then got confirmation from, say, like my mother and father, that yeah, that actually happened, right? But that experience, seeing that movie, it still fascinates me on how um, your memory can be that, I don't know, change.
Mutable. It's
Yeah,
mutable.
mutable. That's a good way. That's a good way. That's a good way to put it.
It's one of the things we really like to lay down for people, is the fact that what how do we actually discern what was real and what was memory and what was a dream even, and a memory of a dream. These states of
or
consciousness,
if we even should.
well, it's just the exploration of, and the point being that it illustrates how we tend to be have so much conviction in ideas of what we think are solid and fixed, and then we run with that and build houses off of these ideas, and it's,
Like
you know,
space.
well, anything, you know, it's just all consciousness is such a fascinating, you know, wave to ride.
It really is, and I mean, you look at especially say like the satanic scares in place in
The
1980.
80s, yeah.
Yeah, where you had these people that insisted that when they were children that they had been, abused by adults in all kinds of horrific ways. Now, of course, some of these children were prompted by social workers or other used hypnosis, and I'll put quotation marks around that, and ask leading questions, and so then have these kids who came out with absolutely incredible stories that you look back at him now and it's like, how did anybody believe what these kids were saying? Yet there were several hundred people who were actually convicted and sent to jail. It wasn't really until recently that most of them have now finally been released once cooler heads prevailed, even though it took 10 years or more to re-examine these cases. Yet a few of these children who are now adults will insist that their memories were real, but their parents, people who lived with them at that time, be like, no, nothing like that happened. And so and it's like you said, a lot. Some of these people have gone and and built their houses on these false memories. Now, I'm sure that there probably were some cases of child abuse that happened that and involved or arrested, convicted, right? So, but some of these more fantastic, lurid cases that came out of say like satanic rituals being performed at funeral homes, babies sacrificed and thrown into the cremation oven, that sort of thing. I sincerely doubt if those kinds of stories actually happen, but there are still people today, maybe not as intimately involved, who will insist that yes, this was all true. This all actually happened. So we're left with this question on what is reality, especially when it comes to the past and memories. You know,
Yes. Yes.
some people would say, well, maybe maybe it actually did happen in another timeline, so to speak. And like going into the whole Mandela effect type of
Well, there's always perception again is one of those crossed keys here,
thing.
and it's hard to have any conversation about these kinds of things without factoring that in. However, that said, let's get to uh I want to knock out your dream, the way you dream, and just get those details out of the way so we can move further into this juicy conversation. So, how do you experience the dream realm? And usually what I ask is, like, is there architecture? What is the architecture of it? Is it color, sensate, feeling, all the stuff? How does it How does it play out for you?
My dreams have changed as I've grown older. Um, they're they're not as intense as as when I was young. When I was a teenager and a young adult. I had very very vivid and uh, detail oriented types of dreams. As I have gotten older, the the details to them have somewhat disappeared, and now I am left with more of the emotions involved. I, and 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 it's difficult to articulate that because I'm a very visually oriented person. I mean, I'm a artist, still am, years years, and so a lot of my experience is based on a visual uh, context. Um, and I could see that really being played out more when I was younger, because I mean I would have as as uh, some people have described it, almost uh, movies as dreams with three acts, a beginning, a middle, and an end. Uh, various characters. The only thing missing would be like the commercials or intermission. Go get popcorn. Intermission after. But now, as I've gotten older, um, I have several different kinds. I will have the ones that are um, uh, obviously just a brain dumps. I like I like to describe because a lot of times they involve things that have happened maybe during the day or during the week, kind of almost like a replay, but a lot of times with different players involved, rather than the same people that I associate. Um, Sometimes there'll be s- stress. I'll have reoccurring dreams about um, tornadoes. Coming from the Midwest, now, tornadoes have always, major fact and a fear of mine when I was a kid. I still have tornado types of dreams as an adult. Um, Not so much where I'm actually being injured or killed or anything like that, or that the storms or see the storms coming, trying to find a place to hide, and then after it goes by, after effect. I also have like stress where um, I'm trying to move my cats somewhere outside of the house. We've got like five cats, and I'm trying to carry every single one of them in my arms outside to say like a car or someplace like that. And of course, naturally, none of the cats are wanting to swap. And my fear is that they're all going to play and and disappear. Um, that that one of the tornado the tornado dreams occur quite frequently. Um, you know,
With that said,
okay.
are you? So I did forget to get this. So you're from the Midwest?
Hmm. Yes. Grew up in Indiana. Still live here.
Oh, Indy. Okay,
By Grimstake.
excellent. Yeah, the tornadoes are because I am in the Iowa. I can't.
Oh, well, yeah, you know.
Yeah, and they certainly still factor into my dreams as well. And I haven't lived in Iowa in a very long time, but that's such a major archetype. And this is why I always like to get into where people were at least spent their formative years to get that kind of those bigger symbols, and so the ocean for people on the coast or the mountains, and certainly tornadoes for us in the Midwest. My goodness. And although I don't recall any kind of swarming tornadoes like like we've seen in the last 2 years. But yeah, and speaking of that, we're having an unusual thunder electrical storm out here in Portland, which is
But
crazy.
I can hear that. I can hear the thunder.
Yeah, there was a crack like I've never heard. It reminds me of the Midwest. I've never heard it in a decade of living in this house.
Mm,
So that is very important and significant. I definitely am glad you mentioned that, so that we can get an idea of that. So you've got the daily unwinding stuff, the stress stuff. I'm interested in now, what do you think? So this can get into the lucid and other stuff, but there's something that you said that's provocative to me, and it's the change in your dreaming. I'm very
mhm,
interested in that. And, less intense, less details, but more emotion.
right.
And so, first of all, I have two questions here. Where did this transition in your life, I guess, where and when, and I mean, where is more philosophical. Uh, when did this happen for you? And so where were you on an emotional level? And can you explain, I know words definitely fail, but can you give us a detail of how these emotional dreams play out?
Well, first of all, I would say that probably within the last, say, 10 years was when my dreams started to shift or, you know, scale, watching, watching show types of, I, I rarely have nightmares. Used to have, and I still do, used to have nightmares quite a bit. Every once in a while, I will still have night, but it will be rather than my earlier memories of nightmares were again these kind of long, drawn out things, where you're being pursued by something, or uh, but I mean it would be uh, just very very detailed oriented leading up to like old art season type here. The nightmares I have now, they tend to be very quick, or at least my perception of them afterwards. Uh, there isn't a lot of build up to it. It's just a scenario where something bad happened and actually trying to, because I've awoken my wife several times when I'm trying to say something or yell in the dream, and um, naturally she's paralyzed dreaming. I've actually managed to, to moan in my sleep, or sometimes partially start talk, but the nightmare has to be pretty bad for me to get to that point, and those don't happen as often. But when they do, they're pretty intense. Now, I will say, now this is an interesting story. I mean, it's dream related, but it kind of goes over into that realm of the unknown and possibly paranoia, not paranoia, paranormal. When I was a teenager, probably when I was about 17 years old. Uh, Around the time that I was graduating high school, I started to have a series of hypnagogic types of dreams where I would be asleep and then I would wake up and I would obviously be, still partially asleep, though my perception was is that I was entirely awake because I could see my bedroom, very well aware of everything, and I would see um, a very large spider in my room. Now, I'm not talking about, say like a wolf spider about the size of a quarter. No, these would be spiders about the size of a dinner, either coming up over the edge of my bed at or crawling up the wall or something like that. Now, I don't like spiders at all, and especially big ones like that. I definitely don't like. And I would react by yelling very loudly and jumping out of bed, which my parents hated that naturally in the middle of the night. Um, and as soon as I would do that, then I would be entirely awake and everything normal. Well, this happened a number of times, except for one night. I woke up and I looked over at the window, which besides my bed, near at the side ahead of the bed, and I saw this big honking spider, and this one was probably the biggest of all. I mean, it was huge, about the size of body, with the size of a basketball, and its
Oh,
leg
jeez.
and its legs even bigger than that, and it was crawling up the curtain of that window. Well, when it was doing this, all of a sudden, now this window had one of those pull down shades. I don't know if you're familiar with it, like a tension shade, where
Yes.
you would pull it down and then it would hold in place, and then when you went to open it, give it a little jerk, and it would go up automatically. Well, when this thing was crawling up this curtain, all of a sudden that pull down shade flew up with such force that it knocked itself and the curtain, the draw curtain, off of the wall and fell to the floor with a very, like a very loud uh, sound, which then, I mean, promptly, woke me up completely, and everything seemed to be normal. But was that just a coincidence? That at the time that this happened, and this was the middle of the night. I mean, the shade had been drawn all night long. Why did it suddenly decide to fly up with such force that it knocked itself and the curtain off the window at the same time that I was seeing this very large spider going up? And the funny thing is that afterwards, that was the end. I don't recall ever having any more dreams along those lines. So I've often wondered. Don't really quite believe in coincidence, but I would hate to think that there could be, astral spiders, invisible spiders, crawling around out there that, under certain conditions, dream state, so to speak, you catch a glimpse of them. But I don't know.
There are many, many, many reports of astral spiders.
I know.
And
I don't like to think about it.
There's reports of AI robotic astral spiders too.
hmm
Mm-hmm.
But these things, they look, um, even though I wasn't even aware that these kind of spiders existed, looking back at it, they resembled like the huntsman spiders you see in Australia, except
Oh
probably
my God.
yeah,
Oh,
except maybe
yikes.
triple the size. You
Oh,
know,
Jesus.
I'll
yeah,
just add
Yeah.
one more correlated synchro into this. There was a news story this week about a spider. Someone filmed a spider eating a dog or some kind
Ugh.
it
of
was
what
it
Is
was
was
it?
that
a
real?
mini possum,
Mini
like a
possum. Yeah,
mini possum.
that
Yeah,
was
oh
it.
yeah,
Oh, where was this? Oh,
I don't
jeez.
remember, but somewhere not far.
I think it was
In the
I think
States?
no,
This
I
sounds
think
like
That was
Australia.
Australia. Yeah.
Yeah. Australia has all those creepy crawlies.
They're all stuck on the island.
yeah. I mean, and even though the huntsmen, they're not dangerous to people. They're just friggin' big.
Well, they tap into that, that we question our place when we encounter things of that nature, that when they get to a certain size, there's that, it taps into that reptilian brain of, is this the fight or flight, and I think polarizes us in probably a positive way, where if we don't have a tool, how do we deal with things that could do us damage?
Hmm.
That's still there.
That's the flight
Yeah.
part.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, these experiences certainly polarized me. uh, Polarized me in having to change my pajamas afterward.
Oh Lord.
But
So
so
why
it,
do
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
why do you think this shift happened for you in your dream experience?
One of the things that that has happened with me as I have gotten older, and and I had some of these dreams when I was younger, but they seem to have become more apparent as I've gotten older. Is these types of dreams where I will be I will be interacting with people in the dream that um, I know them. I have known them all of my life. Maybe I'm in a relationship with them, um, uh, uh, but they're not somebody that I know in real life. And there is this emotional component with these people that I am dreaming about. That oftentimes when I wake up, I realize that I don't know these people, that I have never known these people, but I still have, I mean, for a little while at least, this impression of a lifelong interaction with them. And I'll actually for like several days have this sense of loss that I'm not with that person now, that they're gone. Um, Even though I never knew them. I mean, they, as far as I know, they never existed. Yet in the dream, they were very real and very important to me in this dream. And um, I often wonder if now, of course, there are dreams that are just dreams, like I talked about before, where it seems to be that your mind really just kind of processing day's event, categorizing, really just a um, type function. But then there are these dreams that I think are actually you are looking into and experiencing your parallel life. I think that all of us, at the very same time that we are living this life right now, that we are also living an infinite number of other lives throughout the multi. And that also includes what we would refer to as reincarnation, past life, present, future life. Because once we get out of physical, out of the material world, the there is this timeless state. There is no time. So the concept of having a past life is meaning we are living those lives right now, and we are living our current life. But this also includes lives in, for want of a better word, parallel world, alternate dimension, alternate universe. At the same time as what we would refer to as future lives. Again, because time really has no meaning, we are living all of these lives simultaneously. And I think that there are times when dream that those barriers are they disappear and we're able to see at least one at a time. I don't think dream contemplate that of these of life, and I think that is one reason why some of these dreams, and I know I'm not the only one. I've talked to people and read accounts similar experiences, but that is why we have these dreams where um, there's this whole backstory, so to speak, written with this dream. Even though you may be dreaming about just a little, segment of your life, know that there is this whole other experience in your memory in the dream, not only involving yourself but some of the people and loved ones that you're interacting in this. So again, like I said, when you wake up, it's like, okay, people aren't in. I don't know who these people are,
All right, here
Like a
we
little
go.
Alice in
but I do know
Wonderland.
who. And now I'm not with them. And it's just there's this it's really difficult to describe this heavy emotion involved after they're gone. That that life, I may never experience it again consciously, or maybe I will. Who knows? But at this very moment, I have this sense of loss.
Yes. I am.
I've had
I've
those types
been.
of dreams.
There have been several of our maybe a couple, and I talked to so many people behind the scenes that have been saying this to me lately. This is a theme, so I'm with it, that have gone past their second Saturn return, and there's been this shift in the dream. So I'm wondering, were you around 55, 56 when the shift happened?
Maybe even a little bit younger than that. But yeah, I mean that would sound right. I'm 61 now, so I mean it's happened probably within the last 10 years.
So
It's one of these things that I mean you don't consciously think about. It's only until somebody like yourself brings it up. It's like, yeah, that is right.
yeah, it's something I'm starting to notice, and of course, when I start seeing a theme, I become more, fascinated by it. And it's only something, like I said, that's just all of a sudden I've been getting a lot of information from people that are in their 60s now that have been saying there was a shift that happened. And I just find that extremely fascinating. Uh and the shift's different for everyone, of course. We all dream differently too, despite, I'm not one of these empiricists that think everything has one, it's completely one way and that's the only way. Uh, oh, here we go. We got a got a logging truck going by. It's the good old Northwest.
Yeah, but your internet's staying up tonight, so it's good. It
Yeah,
balances.
it's been flickering. I can't. The storm's unbelievable. So, well, the electricity here's been flickering. Okay, so in this too, exploring these dreams with you modern. First of all, let's knock out what lucidity levels you reach. Do you get out of body, or as some of the older language was, like astral traveling?
Traveling. Um, no, I have, and much to my disappointment, because I have tried to do this before. I've always been fascinated by full concept Robert Monroe's book first came out, uh, and that got me started on how to do astral projection both consciously and try to possibly achieve it in a dreamy lucid state. But I have never been able to uh, get very far when it comes to I may have just like a brief moment where I'll think I'm dreaming. I mean, I have that often actually, where I realize that I am dreaming, and maybe I can try to control it. But then off I go in some new tangent, and that's gone. And that for the most part, that is uh, the way that I dream. I'm very uh, schizophrenic dreamer, so to speak.
It's not schizo, it's ADD.
Yeah. But I mean, it does. I mean, it's I've never had much luck in trying to control it, and it's just a very uh, haphazard type of direction. My dreams go. Like I said, when I was younger, there seemed to be more of a almost like plot element to a lot of my dreams, and like I said, like a beginning, middle, and end. But as time has gone by, it become, become more and more just almost like a skipping record of having one experience and concentrating on something in the dream, and then the next minute it's gone off onto a completely different tangent. And I I don't recall my dream much. Sometimes that's a good thing, because when I was younger, I would have a say like a very emotional dream, and I still do it. Have a very emotional type that stick with me for at least that day, sometimes for than a couple of days. Fortunately, I don't have. Uh, when I do, they do tend to stick quite. Again, I've just seemed to notice that it's been very difficult for me to try when I'm in a dream state to put my finger on that that knowledge that I am dreaming and that I can control. It's almost like my mind is trying to resist uh, that type. It kind of goes along the same I, line that I've noticed that is say I'm in a romantic situation and that it's starting to play out the way that it should naturally. It never does.
Exactly,
Oh
exactly.
no.
I was telling you this the other day, Nish. It's like
You
I've
were.
never had sex in a dream.
Yes, yes,
It's crazy.
it
I
is.
love
It
my
is.
wet dreams so much. It was my favorite. Oh, it's so good.
It never ever plays out. Yeah, I mean, it comes up to
That's like Astro Blue Balls.
Yes, yes, very much so. I like
Exactly.
that. That's a great term.
Did in so the ones where you were speaking earlier about that were highly emotional, where these people but you don't know them in your apparent waking life, in this
Right.
Tim Swartz life. Uh, how do what are the particulars there? So you know them. This is an emotional content. These dreams, I imagine, stick with you for days, or at least not the dream itself, but that mood.
Oh yeah, very much. Well, naturally, a lot of times it would be say like somebody that I would romantically involved.
Hmm.
But again, I mean, um, it's not somebody that I know in real life, um, and and it's again, it's this. There's and it's hard to explain. There's backstory to this. It's thundering here now. You send your storms all the way over here.
I'm passing it on.
um, but again, it's there's this backstory where I have memories of knowing this person for quite a long time. In the dream. Now, naturally, when I wake up, I'll have I'll have the emotional memory of having the actual memories in the dream that had made it up. But I mean, there'll be I'll remember like how we had met or dates that we had or things like that. Sometimes it'll be rather than a romantic situation, just a very good friend that I had known all of my life. That enjoyed hanging out, thing, uh, hanging out, in the dream. And then after wake up, it's just like I've lost my friend, and
Yes.
you and that will hang on with you. And that's the thing that always amazes me about these types of things, how that emotion will hang with you for a long time. Uh, which has that that's what kind of helped lead to the idea that rather than just being something brain just concocted uh, in that split second dream, that no, that this is actually real. This is something that you are actually experiencing like reality. Uh,
Yes.
you're just catching a glimpse of it because the emotion is so strong and the memory is so strong with this. Uh, I just I and I realize that the brain and your mind are a fantastic thing. So it's such a mystery, to us still on how they operate, on the physical material level. But I've always been left after these experiences, um, almost this gut instinct that this is more than that. This is more than some kind of chemical reaction going on based on your day's experience. Uh,
Yes. I completely agree. And I mean, as well as I know, the more you encounter people and varied amounts of people and start seeing the overlap and even reading about it, I mean, it seems evident to me. Where So this kind of brings me into this area that I think is my favorite, is where's this overlap? Here we are now. And so what's this overlap that goes on that could possibly uh, play with alternate timelines, reincarnation possibilities, the idea of the nowness of consciousness and how we can shift so you can be in that dream state and be having these incredibly emotional experiences that are in depth, intense, and visceral, and yet and then come back and feel the longing and the missing of these characters that have no meaning in your life here. What's going on? How it's possible you're waking up over there and you're having this experience there where you miss your wife, and that's in this life, this experience and all that.
And does that version of you dream about your life here?
right, right.
That's what I'm asking
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, sure. Exactly. Now, because I think that there are probably, uh, at least the way that we think about it, probably in almost infinite number of ourselves in these different timelines and reality way that uh, the universe probably operates. That every every decision that we make, every decision that others have made throughout time, have caused branching off, so to speak, different routes. When if there was a beginning to this universe, almost immediately it branched out to number multi. Probably before that, they're uh, an ultimate or uh, a different infinite number of multi-universe and so on and so forth. I mean, the mind boggles with that. So, what are the chances that one of our other lives dreams about us? Uh, it probably does happen. We are able to have these dreams and experiences where we briefly glimpse our other lives, then so can they. Um, I think that probably there are lives that are maybe more closely related to our current one. Um, little hard to describe. It's almost you think of, say, like parallel road run uh, close to each other. The closer that the roads are to each other, the more likely of back and forth interaction. Further away you get either direction, least likely are to have this kind of interaction. And probably the more diversity away from our current life, if that makes any sense. There's a phenomenon called time swaps, where somebody will
Yes.
be, say, just driving their car, walking down the street, and all of a sudden they'll find themselves what appears to be either in a past situation, sometimes even a present situation. The concrete sidewalk underneath them will turn into bricks. Instead of cars on the road, they'll see horse-drawn carriages. Skyscrapers have disappeared into small homes. They'll have all sensory experiences. They're able to, smell the air. They're hear people shouting, horses whinnying as they're dragging the carriages along. There's a possibility that rather than this being an actual, say, like time travel event, that have gone back to this our past or our future, could be experiencing a very close by um, alternate reality that may, their timeline may be just slower. So, so their present time matched up to ours would be, say, 50 years, 100 years in the past. Uh, so, I mean, that's definitely a glimpse of that. For all intents and purposes, it would look like that, that you were experiencing our past, that closely related. Go further down the line, and your whatever it is that makes your conscious, that that spark off of creation, that makes you you and will always be, um, may inhabit a reality that is so completely different from this one as to be just unrecognizable as any kind of reality. which may explain some of these really bizarre nightmares that people have. You may be experiencing just a normal day at work in an alternative reality, but this reality, it seems like that chased down by hairy monsters with big teeth. So I think that under the right conditions, which may just be going to bed and going to sleep, that your mind is less oppressed by the material, that it's able to open itself up to the universe, all of the different astral dimensions, whatever infinite number of other realities out there, and um, uh, and the walls break down because these alternative lives that you have all across the spectrum, it's still you, all right? It's not a different you in these other lives and realities. It is you. Um, uh,
It's you with different variables.
yeah, exactly. You're the mind in this world, in the material world, has to partition itself off. There'd be no way that you could consciously experience this infinite number of realities that I think that we're all living. You'd go insane.
Right.
Probably, some people are through a chemical breakdown or whatever, catch a glimpse of that and probably do go insane. So, at times at night when you're asleep, or I've had a lot of these uh, types of dreams actually when I'm napping. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
yeah, they seem to be a lot more real and profound if I'm just having a short sleep.
Even before you're fully in REM, you start to get it. Like you close your eyes,
Yes.
2 minutes, boom, you're seeing other stuff. Yeah, I have the same.
Well, and that's something else that I have contemplated on. Because uh, you do. I mean, just kind of like close your eyes, and almost you're just immediately in a dream state. So it could be either a that your brain is constantly dreaming, even when you're awake, dreaming, but just don't realize it. And as soon as you even maybe even just start daydreaming, briefly slip off to sleep, boom, you're in this dream state, constant, or you just, ooh, that was a big
Oops.
one.
Boom, that's a good one.
Oh my gosh. We heard that clear over here in Indiana.
It rattled my balls.
Uh-huh. Mine too. Or
I have
okay, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I wanted to, before we got off on this too far,
Uh,
the reason why I asked that, is it possible that one of these other timelines of ourselves, or if we're tapping into ourselves, so say another version of you pops into your Tim Swartz life, but it's, a Japanese version of you. And where I'm going with this is the idea of possession.
yeah.
Is it possible, from where you stand and how you see things, that this phenomena of possession or pop-ins, or even erratic
Walk-ins.
behavior, walk-ins, or even erratic behavior that we see on the news a lot these days, where someone's just totally out of character and they've just flipped, and so rather than being something supernatural, like say a demon, is it possible that it could actually be another you from another timeline that somehow snapped in and is trying to come to terms with uh, what's going on?
This
Right.
So
reality.
it, like waking in a dream, but waking in a dream, another dream of yourself.
Right, this could be
So
like a demon's nightmare.
right, through the net of, or the guise of possession as, like, say, the religious would view it,
Right.
and need to be exorcised and all that. Is there a correlation there for you?
That's that's very interesting. I do think that there are um, there are parasites, spiritual parasites, or even predators for for word. I don't give them any religious. There's there are um, other things out there that just like we have wolves, hyenas in the physical plane. There are probably the spiritual, astral levels of this as well. So I mean, yeah, I mean, some of these cases that you see of people acting out of character or acting like they're possessed, uh, there is an actual other type spiritual entity involved. Uh, you put on, that's a very good point though, because there have been, as you well know, a number of really interesting cases throughout history of walk-ins where somebody, say, will have an accident and appear for briefly, for all intents and purposes, dead, but then will come back to life, be resurrected through medical ways, and but their personality has completely changed. Uh, One person that I can think of, who was the writer, Bob Rampa, uh, wrote a series of books about alleged experiences as a Tibetan monk, uh, 1940s. Turned out that this was person who wrote these books was a British plumber. That one day when he was trying to, he had a ladder up against a tree. I can't remember exactly what he was doing. Fell off the ladder, according to his wife, and hit his head really hard. And when he came out of the hospital, he had turned into this Tibetan monk whose name was Rampa. And so was this actual walk in, a spiritual being who just happened to be hanging around while this English plumber accidentally killed himself and decided he was going to take a second chance at life? Or, like you said, was this a situation where some other timeline fairly close by kind of came into play? Because remember, like I said, um, all of these other lives that we are living, it's still us. It's still that spark of universal consciousness that makes you you, but it's just been kind of like divided off, sectioned off little pieces, throughout the cosmos. So yeah, I mean, I think that there there's a good possibility, and it also, now that now that I'm talking about this, I've had several people tell me stories where they have been in a situation where they think that they have died, and then all of a sudden there's almost like a shift in consciousness, and they find themselves someplace else and alive. I had one guy tell me that he was on a plane jet that was coming in for land. All of a sudden, um, they hit turbulence and the plane dropped down fast. I mean, just a flat drop. And he said that things were flying around and everyone was screaming. And he says, and then the next thing he knew, he was home with no recollection how he got home or that there had even been a plane flight recently in his life. And he told me, he said, "No, I think that I died. That was a different reality or world." He really couldn't come up with it. He said, "I think that I died, but then my life, my consciousness is continuing on in this reality. He said, I think that this reality is different than the one that I was living in last year."
Oh, so he came from that one to this one.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. That's what he thinks.
Yeah, this is fascinating.
There was also an incident of a guy that tried to go through customs with a passport from a country that didn't exist. Getting back to the time slips.
Yeah, that happened in Japan.
In Japan, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's a number, I mean, if you go and just look them up, there's a number of different cases like that where sometimes it does seem to there seems to be like a physical component to it, but and Dish as you uh, put out there, I think that there could very well be under some circumstances a melding, so to speak, or a push out of one consciousness to the other. But again, since it's still you, it's just another aspect that may have been living in a different reality, but somehow, some way has um, found yourself in this one.
It's interesting too that a lot of these stories happen in airplanes or in the air or during air travel. And a lot of that I've heard, and it reminded me of like I wonder what happened to MH370 and things like that.
Well, I had a woman tell me she had experience when she was a kid when she fell out of a tree, and it was the same situation where she was climbing a tree with friends, and she was pretty high up. She said, fell, and she said, but before she hit the ground, she kind of blacked out, and then the next thing she knew, she was sitting in her kitchen eating a sandwich, and but none of her friends were around. Nobody had any recollection of them being together that day and playing in a tree, and then she didn't postulate that she had died or anything like that, but it sounded so familiar, like the story about the guy who said crashed a jet and did it.
Yep, that's crazy.
With all this, as we move into these ideas of overlapping realities, just the way that dreams overlap memories and all that, is it possible that this whole idea of the Maya of death, the mirage of death, because if we're always in the now, our consciousness is always, our waking consciousness is always happening right now, then where does that really put death or birth? If until we're there, but if we're always now, we're always alive, or are we dead?
It's just all a construct. The whole death, and it's a way to. I think it's a way to. I'll shut up. It's not my question.
No.
I just think it's a way to apportion an experience. Portion it out.
What have you come to, Tim, in your years of exploration, and especially talking to so many people of diverse backgrounds?
Well, it's again, it's a situation where I have no idea because I have had paranormal experience where it does seem like that I was interacting with ghosts or some kind of spiritual type of entity. Sometimes this, whatever it is I'm interacting with, have a personality, and than other times, of course, and naturally tend to assume that if you're dealing with something visible, seems to be, a discarnate entity, sometimes, it's personality that there is this this line between life and death, that consciousness is in physical body for so long, and then on to different type of reality. Um, but then again, we see these experiences, like I was just telling you, where people think that they have died, yet they find themselves continuing on. So, is this something that happened to all of us? I mean, even to the point where um, we're old and on our deathbed or what have you, and that we're getting ready to meet our maker, and we see all of our previously deceased loved ones surrounding the bed, and then the next thing you know, you find yourself 5 years old again and playing in the field behind your house. Is there this actual, people like to describe it, the Meadowland afterlife that we go and experience, or is that just a fabrication of our memories to try to explain when we do perish briefly and then come back, and our minds are not able to grasp what has happened to us, so it has this construct of the middle? Or is it all just a continued existence for us across the multiverse? Uh, that if we die, that's a hard word to use, um, because it so much yet actually says so little.
If our vessel
Yeah,
perishes, yeah.
yeah, very good. Yeah, do we just find ourselves, continuing onwards in another reality, living our lives till we go on to the next one? I know that there are a lot of people who are hoping that they're hoping for that time of rest, after their life, especially you've led a normal life, old and ready for a rest. But I mean, do you get that in the sense that we have all been led to believe of, either the Meadowland or the clouds or floating around playing harps, and, and that sort of thing? Or is it just a continuation of our consciousness in a different realm, different life? But again, you have to remember that consciousness creates all of this. That if it wasn't for consciousness, all of our, which are all basically part of the same consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
if our consciousness wasn't there to live in these other multi realities, they probably wouldn't exist. Uh, it's a whole quantum uh, reality idea that without a consciousness to observe and experience that, none of it exists. So our consciousness actually plays the it's the lead role in all of it.
Yeah, it's
All of
almost
these
self-sustaining too,
Yes,
in
yes,
that
very much
way.
so.
Yeah, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. Well, it goes into the idea also, and I'm sure you probably talked about this in the show before, because uh, thousands of years ago, people believed, say, like in the Greek gods, Terra, were these were real to them. They existed. They performed miracles. People had experience. Still have experience.
That's right.
To believe in them. So did they actually, exist as a part of our creative abilities? Since we are a part of creation, we have that spark of creation in us. So if there are enough people who believe that God exists, they actually exist.
Exactly.
Nowadays we don't believe. Most people don't believe in the Greek God, so kind
Well, they were overtaken by the Roman gods.
yeah, well, yeah, but people don't believe in those. They believe now in spacemen.
Yeah,
They believe
right.
in the yeah. So, have the Greek gods turned into the little grays with the big eye? The faces have changed, but
It's a
maybe inside they're the
excellent
same.
question. Yeah, and I'm right there with you. It's that this reminded me rather what you're saying of American Gods, the book American Gods by Neil Gaiman.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, I love those. Love those.
it's a good book.
I haven't had a chance to see the TV series. Basically.
I saw the first season; it was good, and Good Omens was pretty good too. By the way.
Oh, good omens. Brilliant.
Yeah.
The second season was just as good.
I haven't watched it.
With all this said, though, is there so if we now overlay the idea of transcendence onto all of this, and we look at it from the perspective of code, and all of this as are a big puzzle with all of these ideas as pieces on the table as we're creating this larger picture. Is there a possibility in your mind, at least, that through transcendence and whatever that is, I suppose we need to come to terms with a, a localized idea of what that is,
Mm-hmm.
that we could unlock the code, that we could get past all of this, all of these layers, all of this refraction, and maybe move on to something more?
I think that is a possibility. Of course, most Eastern philosophy, Buddhism, teaches that uh, once remove desire, the desire for desire, and place yourself or try to place yourself above all of that. That is where nirvana. Get yourself out of that cycle. Now, they would refer to it as the cycle of reincarnation, just, just putting it on earthly level. Uh, but what I'm thinking is that it actually goes, beyond reincarnation on earth level, but as a continuation on all the levels of reality.
Yes, that's where I'm going with it.
Right, yeah, and so they're probably, I mean, there more than likely is a way to escape that. You look at like Tibetan Book of the Dead, Egyptian, they they teach that there is a way uh, to escape that continual recycling of soul. But of course, um, the way our physical or material mind work, it really it gives us an incomplete picture of this perception of how our souls operate in the universe. And like you're saying, goes much further beyond just earthly plane, and you have to take into consideration full, not even just the multiverse. You're talking about the infinity verse, so to speak, that your consciousness made. However, there has to be what's the word I'm thinking? Locus. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that
Yeah,
correct.
look, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
You have to be focused in one of the dimensions at a time.
right. So there has to be some place, and again, place is the correct term, that outside of all of that, that the ultimate source of consciousness prevails and pervades, and is looking at all of this, much as if we were flying on a plane and watching the landscape, below. Uh, there is this ultimate source of consciousness we are all a part of, but then again, we're not a part of, as long as we exist within this this
Individuated
well,
space.
yeah. This landscape of multiverses. Um, of course, say like Tibetan Book of the Dead. I mean, them it's as easy as when you die, you have to avoid what was it? It was like the don't want to go to the red light because that is the light of copulating couple, and that would immediately put you back into the reincarnation cycle.
It's like,
Yeah, and they're like the snakes and the alligators, of like
Mm,
Azadeha and stuff like that.
right,
and they all
right.
correlate to chakra color.
So, but I mean, don't look for me for like out knowledge when it comes to Eastern philosophy. But
Well, but
I okay. Go ahead.
We use the wisdom of the crowd principle here.
There you go.
yeah, the Eastern mixed in with all so that's just one construct, really. And so I'm wondering, with all of it, so the idea of transcendence is a bigger thing for me, and the Eastern stuff certainly is one of the fractals. And if everything we can think of here, that our minds can wrap around here, are just other fractals of it, of this experience. And so I'm wondering your thoughts on like full integration, when we've fully integrated all of it uh into one pinpoint moment. This sometimes in my ponders is like the awakening within the dream, where for me it has at least been, oh shit, I'm awake. And everything kind of comes together for a second. And then in that second, because it's so big, for me at least, it's so big and intense and lucid that then I just shatter down into another million pieces again. I'm having the dream I was having, and then I wake up back into my niche life.
um, there, the late British writer Colin Wilson.
Oh, I love him.
He talked about epiphany and how there are times in our life where we'll just find ourselves engulfed in ultimate happiness. Uh, says that a lot of people never experience. Every once in a while, some people will, where it's just like all all sadness, all terror, everything negative just leave you for a brief moment, and you are just left with this ultimate universal happiness. Almost, I mean, for want of a better description, kind of like that feeling you'd have just before you got out of bed, or just as you got out of bed on Christmas for a kid. That excitement, that ultimate happiness when you know like saw everything under the tree and before anything was even and he said that you know that he thinks that that is the key to opening yourself up to that state of transcendence, that state of bliss. He says that that is the way that we should be living all, and that says that you can obtain that. That is really the way to achieve that ultimate spiritual awakening that take you away from not only this material world but all the others that take you out of that continual process of of death, rebirth, living, death, living, and will basically then join back up in material, physical terms. But
Totally cool. You go back to the cloud.
yeah, you go back to yeah, very good. That's a good way to put it. You go back to you go back to the cloud. He says, but so many people, they like I said, they may have that experience. Some people may never experience. Some of us may have it once out of 10 on and are never again. It's almost the antithesis of living, a normal life. But he always felt that that was the answer to achieving that state of that state of get us off continual treadmill of life. Uh, but he says that it's as far as he knew. I mean, really, even some of the most advanced, say like yogi masters, having been able to close to achieve. He says some people have been able to achieve accidentally get all the chakras, aligned in just that perfect state, Kundalini, flowing just right, and maybe you get a glimpse of it. Unfortunately, the way that we have to live, our physical state, the way that our brains and our bodies are made up, we evolved basically to hide in the bushes so tigers wouldn't eat us and for us to live long enough to have a bunch of kids so they could hide in the bushes so the tigers. And it's we're starting to get glimpses of how things could actually be, but we're still such a long ways away from even we're not even a third or less than halfway there, and even understand what our reality is and part that we play. And um, right now, I see even we have less of a chance because we are letting and I'm not a foe of technology, but right now we are becoming very enveloped in technology and how it controls our lives, leads our lives. And I think that for a while at least, our spiritual advancement, they're going to flounder a little because of our dependence on. Then again, I mean, there could be that moment where technology could actually help us uh, take that next step uh, in our evolution to go from being Homo sapiens sapiens to whatever that next evolutionary level is for our species. And I'm hoping that that next evolutionary level will be more than just a physical advancement, but it'll be a spiritual advancement as well.
Yeah, we have to be careful to integrate all that stuff carefully and not let it overtake our organic sides. I think that's my opinion on that.
I think that's one of the great struggles we're dealing with in this particular time frame.
Oh, and it's going to get worse.
Yeah, well, that leads me to my next question, and possibly my final question. I don't know where we are in time here, but
It's it's past 11. We're like almost at 2 hours.
so Tim, where as we move forward in this timeline that we're on, and we see what is at hand now with the technology around us and AI. And I think most people agree that it's way far further ahead than we're led to believe. I certainly think that. I think it's so far ahead in the timeline that it's looping personally. So, with that said, is is it possible, so this idea of this loop box, this looping reality, and this is still in context to everything we've been talking about, could we possibly be in some sort of loop trap with an AI, having like this AI situation where we get so far and then when it goes back, and this could tie into all the CERN stuff. This ties into recurrence in the Nietzschean way. This ties into reoccurrent dreams and the whole precognitive stuff and deja vu.
And the Mandela
Do you think
effect.
Mandela effect, Starfire Taurus, time slips? Do you think any of that is at play, or does that all seem like folly to you? Or both and more?
Yeah,
Or
well,
is it just the narrative of this game, this experience? That's also a possibility.
right, right. Of course, there is a speculation that we're living a simulation, so that we're a 12-year-old science experiment in a lab,
Yeah.
schools which could explain a lot.
True, but couldn't a dream be
Considering
seen that way?
oh, and
Couldn't
yeah, well,
you know?
definitely, yeah. um, I'm often, there are some things. It makes me think, when you ask this question, there are some things about our reality that seem to be a little too perfect. I mean,
Solar eclipses.
solar eclipses. Well, even the idea that we live in a universe that is set up absolutely perfect in order to sustain life.
Hmm.
If and I can't remember exactly what the laws are,
It's
but
the Goldilocks zone. We're living the Goldilocks zone.
well, I mean, it's more than that. I mean, the planet Earth is in what you call the Goldilocks zone,
Right.
perfect space, a distance from the sun. But the entire universe itself, if the mathematical formulas that govern it were off just a little bit, it wouldn't be able to sustain life. The radiation levels intense or under intense that uh, you also look at and I realize, of course, that we are infants when it comes to uh, observing other planets nearby us. I was reading an article the other day that over 1,300 solar systems have been examined for life, and so far nothing else has been found. And so far we've not received any kind of radio signals from other civilizations, things like that. So I hate to think that this huge universe that we are the only ones here, but maybe our perception of the universe and
Yes.
reality and our place in it is wrong, and
Yes.
that maybe we are the only ones here, but how we conceive the way the universe is made up is wrong. You look at the way that scientists looked at the universe, back in 12th century. That the same amount of time in the future, what will we know about the universe that we don't know now? We or friend. So this idea, yes, saying um, that may not be too far off, but we're not in a position yet to understand it
As a collective,
as a collective, right?
individually.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like
glimpses.
exactly. The whole space thing. I mean, for all we know, it could be a map of the cloud of consciousness itself that we visualize and perceive as the space, quote unquote space, but it's really just our 3D mentality coping with the vastness of it.
Well, have you seen some of these images that they have come up with that has showed, at least as far as they have been able to put these galaxies and galactic
Yeah, I've seen it.
clusters together? It looks very much like brain cells.
It does. The whole
Uh,
the plasma network.
it's just,
Yeah, I find that's fascinating stuff right there.
right. So it's almost like as we look outward, we're looking inward.
As above, so
Yes,
below.
as without, so within.
Yeah. So, but then again, I mean, there's still that part of that. I expect, being raised on like Star Trek, Star Wars, things like that. I expect that there, to be other life out there, and of course, being a UFO researcher, I mean, you can't get away from the original conception that UFOs are spacecraft from planets. So, some of them could be, but I, I think that's probably a very simplistic viewpoint of the whole phenomenon. Much like everything that we have been discussing tonight, I think that a lot of our ideas are very simplistic, but that's the best we come up with.
But things in nature turn out to be very simplistic.
Mm. Um,
I think did you remember the movie Contact?
mhm.
Do you know the part where they build the machine and they build the device, and inside they had to weld the chair to the ceiling,
Right.
and it caused all kinds of problems, and the vibration, and it was just an issue, right? And that was basically a thing saying, don't mess with nature, don't mess with the organicness of what we did. That they did it because they wanted to make it safer or whatever bullshit reason they came up with. I don't know. To me, that was a good example of things are simple the way they're designed and not to mess with them.
Well, the human mind has a tendency
Yeah.
to make complex situations out of simple.
In my line of work, they call it over-engineering.
Oh yes, exactly. But I mean, you look at um, the beauty of things. Say, like rotation, galaxy, compare it with the inside of sunflower have that same type of spiral action, uh, golden ratio. So have this have this beauty of reality, and then combined with a perceived complexity, but it's not. Like you said, it's actually it's very simple. Um, but I suppose you have to have that certain type of mind to be able to look beyond the complexity and see, the simplicity of
Yeah, it's hard because it's so overwhelming, but I totally get that.
it. Oh yeah, overwhelming. Yeah, but that's what makes, to me, all of this fun.
Absolutely.
Because it seems to be overwhelming, because like we discussed at the very beginning of the program, just when you think that you have got an answer and pull it open, it's like a Russian nesting doll.
Exactly. There's always something else.
Always something else, right? And that's what, to me, that's what makes it exciting. And even though, when I was 10 years old, I was hoping that there would be, that I'd live to see an answer, say like UFO, that. But,
You got one from the government, the TTSA.
yeah, but once again, though, I mean, they're just acknowledging that, yeah, people are seeing strange things,
I know.
but there's no explanation of what these strange things is. Is there an explanation? No.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. And the late John Keel, he wrote, and I've observed this myself, that when you think that you have got your finger on an idea on what may be involved, then it goes and it does a 360,
Yep.
and you're left at square one.
Yep. Or something else comes up, some new data point comes up, I'm like, oh, then it can't be that.
Yep.
Yeah, this is why it all feels like a riddle or a puzzle to me.
Or a game.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are games. And so there's something, there is something that does seem like there's architecture to it, like an architect, whatever you want to call it, a grand synchronicity
pattern. There's a
master,
pattern.
a dungeon master, god,
There are
a
patterns.
goddess. Yeah. And so those things for me hold a lot of weight when I experience them. I never did, and so I know we're going to have to wrap soon, but just for the sake of our continuity of some of the stuff, we never did get, were you raised religious?
No, not at all. We went to church. I mean, we were members of Methodist church, but I mean, that's probably about as our church is probably about as all
Yeah.
as a religion, which I found that great, because I mean, I was able to to learn about Christian beliefs without being hammered about heaven and hell, and right.
Yes.
My wife, her family belonged to Baptist church. She was like 10 years old or something like that. The teacher told her that she hadn't been baptized, but at this point she was going to go to hell no matter what. And
That always amazes me.
what a thing to tell a 10-year-old child.
I know.
And that she wants nothing to do with organized religion. And I can
Yeah.
say that for her.
Yeah. It is, it's such so many disorganized things in we get organized and then proselytizing. It just seems like it takes the magic and luster out of something that could be, and oftentimes is, beautiful. And so, yeah.
Well,
And
that's because it's less to do with spirituality and more to do with fear and control.
Exactly.
yeah, absolutely. But then, that's hard. That's hard for people that have been,
Completely indoctrinated.
yeah, I try to avoid that word these days for some reason, and not because of PC reasons, but I just feel like it's
hard for cult members to see that they're in a cult.
it's but a lot of us that are spiritual in nature agree there's something very beautiful at the core of so much of what's going on, and tapping into it and connecting with it, whatever you want to call it, and however you want to house it, house it in Jesus, house it in Siddhartha, house it in the tree outside. It doesn't matter. I think it is a personal experience, and tapping into that can be really rewarding.
Well, and that's the key point right there. It's personal. Your path can be different from mine, as mine could be different from people next door, and that's great. It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
We all have our own paths. However you take them, as long as you take them, that's the way to go.
Right. And
Yeah.
trying to alter other people's paths against their free will.
Oh,
That's actually dark magic, you
Yeah.
know, like, and that's how I view these religions that really push their stuff. Is like, well, if you know, if I mean that's dark magic. If you don't get baptized, you're going to hell. That's dark magic. How do you put
You,
that any other way?
you said that 3 times.
I know I needed to say that 3 times
Why?
because it's usually the people proselytizing like that feel that are looking at people, say for example, like me, that think I'm absolutely hellbound, right? And and I'm thinking, wow, you're trying to force your will onto me, and I'm extremely spiritual. I have a real sense of self. I myself just blends into the natural world around me, and I feel really connected to it. And so, and that's holy and sacred to me. That is, I think, what some people may call God. I just choose not to name it. And so, to have people pushing their stuff at me, saying that that's evil, that I'm going to go to hell,
Trying to
is
trap you in their constructs.
right, is black magic. I mean, how else do you look at that? I mean,
How many times have we heard that the Vatican's, basically dark sorcery?
right. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a whole different show.
Yeah, I know it's a whole
We're getting on to
long
side,
discussion there.
the B side.
Have you?
This is
Wait. Have you ever read or talked to Leo Zagami
no.
in your conspiracy travails? You should check him out sometime.
What's that name?
Leo, I think it's Leo Leone Zagami, Zagami.
Now that I say no, I'll probably go back.
He's a trip. The dude's a trip.
he is, yeah. He's everywhere right now because he's now in America and not silenced. He was silenced in Italy, I think,
Yeah,
for 10 years.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. However, he's here now.
Yes.
I'll definitely check him out. I love getting new names and new information. Like when I'm on these shows. Yes.
Because you've talked to everyone.
Yes.
You've been around so long, you've talked to everyone's been on your show, one way or another.
And that's why sometimes, when I'm given a name that I don't know, I'm just like, how did I not know this person? Now, you asked my co-host from Exploring the Bizarre, Tim Beckley. He probably knows this person. I had lunch with him before.
Yeah,
I
he's
don't
awesome.
doubt
I
that.
loved him.
And we
Tim's
have an
so-
invite out to him too. So.
Oh, okay. I'll remind him. Tell him he has nothing to fear to come.
that the
would be
waters are
appreciated.
right. This has been Tim. This has been so fantastic. I can't tell you. I love talking with people that talk to other people and other interesting people. We get
Excellent.
such a great aggregate. People that talk to other people aggregate so much information that you become a well, and there's just so much there to explore. So thank you for this time.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I always enjoy doing shows like this because it gives me an opportunity to really just let go and talk about all of these different things that I'm interested in, as well as making me think about things that I may not have really considered before. Uh, Opening my mind to new ideas, I always love.
That's how the Johnny L. Tenney interview was for me, in a lot of
Oh.
ways.
That was so great. I really thoroughly enjoyed that. The exorcism stuff
Yeah.
just was out of this world, literally. Yeah.
Tim, did you have any current things you wanted to plug or talk about?
Well, I'll plug just real quick my most recent book, which is called Gef The Talking Mongoose, the Eighth Wonder of the World, and it's not a children's book. This this was a case that took place back in the 1930s on the Isle of Man, where this little farmhouse found itself haunted, for want of a better word, by something that claimed that it was a mongoose that was over 100 years old and could talk. It had an intelligence, and just exactly what it was and what was going on in that situation is still open for interpretation. Fascinating case.
Oh, I have to get that. So much juicy stuff happens on the Isle of Man. It's a constant house. I'm going to have to get that. I'm fascinated by the Isle of Man, and that's right up my alley.
And there's a link for it on Amazon in the show notes.
Excellent.
Great. Yeah, you read the book, you'll find yourself as fascinated as. I mean, I first read about this early on. I was probably like in middle school from a report by late psychologist Andrew Fordor. And so, fortunately, as time went by, helped Tim Beckley, we were able to get a hold of a lot of new information, material that really hasn't been reprinted since the early 1930s. And it's just, it really is just fascinating.
Awesome. Hopefully it won't get, burned on Amazon.
Well, I've already gotten a couple
I'm teasing.
of bad reviews from people who obviously had not read.
Of course, they're the worst critics.
Yeah, but that's so it goes.
So it goes. We were just talking about Kurt Vonnegut yesterday. All right, focus. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Tim, so much again. Nish, it's been a great show. Thank you everyone who's listening, and be sure to tune in next week. We have Vinny Eastwood from all the way live from New Zealand, and we're going to be simulcasting on some radio station in New Zealand at the same time. So that will be fun. So anyway, have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you next week.